Alright, so boom, today we're reacting to the truth about 80s basketball, and I'm not gonna lie. We got a little thing going on. I've been reacting to some old school basketball videos, and LarryBird has been impressing me. I've been reacting to some NJ stuff, react to, little stuff here going on. I'm not gonna lie. I've been learning some more about 80s basketball. It's been changing my mind a bit. You feel me? LarryBird, I did not know he was that good. And now, you feel me? It's just a bigger, more overview of like the entire decade. You feel me? I think. So, yeah, let's just get straight into it, you feel me? I was impressed by one guy. I was like, let me react to some more.
If you've ever been a part of NBA debates that involve discussions about the 1980s, then you know that people can be pretty divided on their opinions on the style and quality of basketball that came from that era, and even about what that era represented. As someone who loves that era of NBA basketball, and who has personally watched hundreds of hours throughout my life of it, I feel like I can offer a bit of clarification on how people can accurately view this decade.
I'm not gonna lie. What I think about back then, right? I feel like the game was less polished. You feel me? Players weren't as you feel me? They didn't have as much game. The average player wasn't as skilled as the average player nowadays. You feel me? They couldn't do as much stuff on the court. I feel like the average role player is way better than back then. But I feel like there's way less foul baiting, way less jokes. I feel like the game was straight to the point. Those 100 points, the crazy they were going, bro, those were real points. They were not free throws. Those were not I feel like the game was less fake back then too. There was a realness to it.
Start by tackling several aspects about the decade and talk
about some great moments in today's basketball, but a lot of times you feel like you're watching WWE.
About what's true, what isn't true, and what you might have not known. First, we'll start with one of the most argued over topics: defense. The current perception of 80s defense depends on who you ask. If you ask a fan from an older generation, more often than not, they're going to tell you that defense was greater at that time, that back then, they played grown man defense. They would always punish each other physically back then, and nowadays, they can barely even touch each other. This is their narrative. But if you ask a lot of younger fans, they don't have to deal with the nostalgia bias, but they also have the disadvantage of not actually watching those games.
I feel like it's literally forcefully pushing people and stuff really defense, bro. I ain't gonna lie, a little chest bump shirt, bro, but
fans will say things like defense was less advanced back then, and that it was easier to score and not as physical as advertised.
I really do think
There's even compilation videos on YouTube of bad defense from the 80s, where guys are given little resistance and minimal hustle and effort is on display. So what gives? You've got two different groups saying totally opposite things about a specific decade. Well, as usual, the truth lies somewhere in the middle and a little off to the side. Let's start with the facts and details we know about 80s basketball. In today's current NBA, teams average 111.7 points per game, which is really high. It's actually the highest since the days Wilt Chamberlain played basketball. Now, the 1980s was actually very close in total offense. Throughout that decade, teams usually...
Wilt Chamberlain is one of the most controversial players to this day, because people still don't believe the 100 points, and I don't know if I believe it or not. I feel like, why would they lie? You feel me? Back then, they lied for him. But at the same time, 100 points, bro. If he was playing as plumbers, I could see it.
They averaged around 109 points per game, which is also a lot of offense. Not only that, but throughout the 80s, teams shot 48% from the field compared to today's 46%. In fact, in terms of field goal percentage, the 1980s were the most efficient decade in all of NBA history. I could break down all the statistical league averages in detail, but here's what you need to know. Today, the league is very high scoring. The 2000s were very low, the late 90s were very low, the early 90s were high, and the 1980s were very high. So immediately, at face value, it appears the 80s defensive era narrative has been pretty overblown, based on how many points they were scoring and how efficiently they were scoring. But what we need to understand was that...
So the 80s wasn't too different defensive wise than now. Basically, he's saying there was people was getting to the basket at the same rate.
The biggest contributing factor to this was the pace of play. The 1980s was some of the most fast break, transition heavy basketball the league has ever seen. In today's game, most of the very high scoring comes from the inflation of three-point attempts. But in the 80s, it was more due to the fact that most games looked like a track meet. The Showtime Lakers of the 80s were famous for this, since Magic Johnson was always pushing the tempo. But it wasn't just them. Many teams played a fast break style, like the Denver Nuggets, who were notorious for their incredibly fast and potent offense, but also a terrible defense. The Pistons, despite their defensive perception, also ran the fast break a lot and could score a ton of points. And there were also teams like Phoenix, Dallas, Portland, and Philadelphia. So transition basketball...
I'm not gonna lie, bro. I heard about the Showtime Lakers, but I never really seen them on tape, to be honest, bro. They was way before my time. But I didn't know they had way more teams like this, bro. It seems like I thought it was really like the Celtics versus the Lakers back then, and every other team in the NBA kind of sucked. But like he's saying, there's a lot of teams that had a really good offense, and yeah, I never heard of them. I'm gonna be honest. I heard about the BadBoyPistons, but I heard about them like beating people up on the court. To be honest,
was pretty much the norm in those days.
But we did react to them. You feel me? I learned more about them.
Plenty of layups and dunks,
but I didn't
which are
see
easier
about the
opportunities.
offense in that video.
Easier opportunities equals a higher field goal percentage. The highest scoring game in NBA history actually came from this era, which was on December 13th, 1983, when the Detroit Pistons defeated the Denver Nuggets in triple overtime, 186 to 184. These were the Pistons, who were known for their physicality, their Jordan...
Bro, what? Yo, they trying to put up 200 points? Like, 186 to 184. Yo, I feel like at some point there has to be, like, you feel me, a limit where y'all gotta just, like, have a penalty shootout like they have in soccer, bro. Like, you feel me? Everybody just take a free throw, bro. First team to start missing.
Rules and their overall punishing defense.
Like,
so how in the world could this defensively revered squad be involved in a game where the final score was in the 180s? It's starting to sound like this whole defensive era thing is just a huge myth. Bro. Well, we're not done yet. And that brings us to the next aspect that goes somewhat hand in hand with this one, physicality. One of the biggest influences in the different eras that people don't usually think of is the flagrant foul rule. Most of you know the details of the flagrant foul, but for those who don't, it's a foul where unnecessary roughness is used on another player. Many times it's called when there is a blow to the head or strong physical contact that was in no way a play on the basketball. Committing this flagrant foul can be devastating to the team that does it, because it results in either 1 or 2 free throws and maintained possession of the ball, and often an ejection of the player who committed the foul. This is a pretty good rule. It keeps players protected, it keeps players from unnecessary serious injuries, and it often keeps tense moments from escalating into really ugly situations. And this rule did not exist until 1990. That means that in the fullness of the 1980s, almost every hard foul was just considered a common foul. If this is the case, doesn't it make sense to hit the offensive player a little harder to make sure he doesn't get an and one? Doesn't it make sense the offensive player a little harder to make sure he doesn't get an and one? Doesn't it make sense?
Yo, bro, he just hit him with a 2-piece for trying to make a leg. Are we be serious? Right, that's after his teammate already did some shit. Like that's after his teammate already hit him and stuff. He hit him with another 2-piece just to like
put a little
tuck him
extra
sleep.
If it means they think twice before attacking the basket next time. The games in the 80s weren't.
And that's not a flagrant. That's not an ejection. Nobody's getting sent off the court. You feel me? No free throws. You feel me? I mean, actually, he's gonna probably get free throws, but yeah.
Always played with this physically punishing nature, only when they needed to be. Like for the Jordan rules or
like, you gotta
NBA
get suspension
playoffs.
for that, bro. Realistically,
in the postseason,
bro.
where every possession
two-piece,
and every point counts, players would often exercise this freedom for the sake of trying to win the ball game. It wasn't that this generation of players was naturally more violent, it's that they were allowed to be. The truth is, just like modern basketball, there were players who played great defense, and there were players who played terrible defense. The key differences were the high-octane pace of play and the permissible hard fouls. In the 1980s, it was possible to have both a league where teams could score into the 120s and a league where games would become very physical and the style would change significantly. There was a term back in the day that was common among players, coaches, referees, and commentators: setting the tone. You don't hear it much anymore in today's game, but back then it was very important, and it essentially meant that
setting, bro, that just sounds ominous, bro. I'm gonna be so honest, bro. That does not sound good.
they were coming out of the gates to start the game, setting the tone for the game's pace, style, and physicality. Nowadays, the game is much more consistent in terms of its style and physicality, because the rules have become much more clear on what is acceptable and what's not, what is permissible contact and what isn't. In the 80s, it was easier for players to control the game and more difficult for the referees to control the game, because pretty much anything goes. For example, it was common for teams like the Celtics and Pistons to be even more physical in matchups with the Lakers, trying to take them out of their finesse style of basketball. They came out of the gates, setting the tone, and oftentimes, it worked. The next aspect is athleticism. You've heard it, and I've heard it. The idea that players back then were slower, weaker, and smaller than modern-day athletes. Is it somewhat accurate? Probably.
I think it's pretty accurate. If I'm gonna be honest, bro, it's just scientifically the truth, bro, and it's just what I've seen, bro. Players nowadays are not. They're just like they're not. They just get like they got a leg up, bro. They have better food. They know more stuff. They spend more money at a younger age. Feel me? They take care of themselves more. Back in the 90s players brag about not taking care of themselves. Like, come on. It's a whole different league back then, bro. I'm gonna be honest.
Is it also grossly exaggerated? Probably that too. In the past 10 years of modern NBA basketball, the average height of the NBA player is 6 foot 7 inches tall and weighs 220.7 pounds. In the 10 years of the 1980s,
the average high school athlete is doing some stuff you wouldn't see in like highlights, bro. Like the type of dunks, at least, bro, is crazy. That's athleticism, raw athleticism. You feel me?
The average height was also 6 foot 7 inches tall, and the average weight was 207 pounds. So although they stood just as tall side to side to one another, the major difference was the weight of the players at nearly 14 pounds less. Simply put, this difference was usually made up of muscle mass. Modern players have an advantage with modern training methods, eating habits, and fitness routines.
Yeah,
Guys in the 80s were simply skinnier, but many of them were still very athletic and had lean muscle. They just overall looked a little less physically imposing than today's players. This has partially led some newer fans to criticize this era when they're looking at some of the most non-threatening and least athletic players.
When somebody just as fast but just stronger
like
and bigger than you, what you gonna do?
With part-time plumbers and accountants. I hate it when people say this, though, because it's easy to take small samples and condemn an entire era for it. It's almost like when people think of the state of athleticism in 2020, they automatically think of Giannis. And when they think of the state of athleticism in the 90s, they think of Jeff Hornacek. The problem with that is that it's erring on an extreme example and isn't a proper survey of the athleticism of the league as a whole at that time. Want another example? Picture 20 years from now. People are hating on LeBron James, saying he didn't play in a strong era of real athleticism, and here's their future arguments. How strong is LeBron's era in 2016 when he lost the MVP race to a guy who struggles to dunk a basketball? How strong could that era have been when one of the best players in the league was someone who was consistently overweight? In LeBron's era, he played against plumbers like J.J. Redick and Kelly Olynyk. How weak were the athletes in LeBron's era if a guy who was only 5 foot 9 inches tall could average nearly 30 points per game? Don't you guys see how
see them on tape, bro? I ain't gonna lie.
ridiculous and biased these statements are?
You feel me? When you look at it from that perspective, bro, I can kind of see it, bro. Because, like, Jokic, bro, the stuff he does on the court, even with the way it looks, bro, is wizardry. You feel me? He's dropping 40, 20, and 20. Like, what can you say about the way he's built? You feel me? Isaiah Thomas was going crazy. You feel me?
Although many of the statements are true to an extent, they're cherry-picking details and acting as if it's the complete picture. They're completely lacking context, but statements like these are usually just emotionally motivated agendas in order to build a negative narrative about a player that they don't like as much as their favorite player. People do this all the time with the 1980s. But when you look around the league in that era as a whole, you see guys who were incredible athletes like Dominique Wilkins, Kenny Skywalker, MichaelJordan, Daryl Dawkins, Charles Barkley, Gerald Wilkins, Julius Erving, Sean Kemp, Xavier McDaniel, Hakeem Olajuwon, Karl Malone, James Worthy, Tom Chambers, Darrell Griffith, David Thompson, Terrence Stansbury, Clyde Drexler, Larry Nance, Dennis Rodman, Orlando Woolridge, David Robinson, Roy Hinson. Seriously, do I need to keep going?
I ain't gonna lie. That is a pretty good list, bro. That's a long list. You feel me? I don't know a lot of them players, bro. I might have to react to them, bro. I've never heard of some of those people. Others I've heard, and I haven't really seen too much footage of. But I'm not gonna lie. I'm getting the point. You feel me? They had athletic players back then.
Many people are just too young or weren't watching at that time to know about a lot of the freakishly gifted athletes of the 1980s, just like how 20 to 30 years from now, many people won't know about many of the great athletes we watch in today's game. The final aspect is competition. I'll make this one quick, but since the 1960s, when the Boston Celtics ruled the basketball world, the 1980s were the toughest era of competition.
With the athleticism thing, for y'all who watch both eras, y'all still think, because I'm gonna have to look into the old athleticism and see how it's stacking up. But y'all feel like they more athletic back then, or like, you feel me, the young guys and the newer players, high school, college, and like, you feel me, NBA level are more athletic now. You feel me? Y'all can let me know in the comments. I'm gonna have to do my research first. You feel me?
And win a championship.
I'm gonna do my research.
That was because the 80s were, as I call it, the era of super teams. There was so much talent at the top of the league, and you had several dynasty-worthy rosters consistently duking it out. Part of that was how the league was rich with stars, but the other part was how there were only 23 teams in the league. Imagine today's NBA, and then we eliminate 7 of the teams, and then distribute the talent from those teams to the remaining 23 teams. Naturally, what would you get? A handful of super teams.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. So the NBA was smaller, and they had like a little bit more better players. In y'all opinion, I don't know how true this can be, but still, I'm imagining with a couple, if you take a couple teams out, bro, all the small teams, imagine all these small franchises who have like 2 or 3 players that are really good being added to some championship teams right now, bro.
Was essentially the NBA in the 1980s. Look around the teams of the league and who won championships in that decade. If you had just 1 or 2 stars on your team in that era, you're not winning a championship. You needed 3 or 4 and a deep bench just to even win 1 ring. With all this being said, am I saying that the 80s was the greatest era of basketball? Not necessarily, but it was a great era, with a crazy history, and with a fantastic collection of talent and athletes, and it certainly deserves your respect. Let me know in the comments section which decade you think had the greatest collection of talent. Thanks for...
I ain't gonna lie, I feel like, you feel me, the era I grew up with, you feel me, that's the era I know. I feel like they got the best collection of talent, you feel me, when it comes to shooters, athletes, you feel me, just all around, bro. But, you feel me, people with a mind for the game, you feel me, basketball IQ is also important. But, y'all can leave your opinions about that in the comments. But, with that being said, you feel me, I feel like I learned a little bit more about the 80s basketball. I didn't know they had that many athletic players. I thought there was like 2, 3, 4 guys, but I didn't know that he was listing like 20 people, bro. It got to the point I was like, all right, bro, I get the point. You feel me? All right, y'all had athletes. But with that being said, you feel me? I'm catching you on the next video.